A 70-year-old man went for a sperm test. The doctor gave him a bottle to collect sperm. The next day, the man came with the empty bottle and said he tried with his left hand and then his right hand. Then his wife tried with her left hand and right hand. Then his daughter-in-law tried with both hands and mouth. Then the neighbor's wife and daughter tried the same way, but could not open the damn bottle. The KGB, the FBI, and the CIA are all trying to prove they are the best at catching criminals. The Secretary General of the UN decides to set them a test. He releases a rabbit into a forest, and each of them has to catch it. The CIA people go in. They place animal informants throughout the forest. They question all plant and mineral witnesses. After 3 months of extensive investigations, they conclude that the rabbit does not exist. The FBI goes in. After 2 weeks with no leads, they burn the forest, killing everything in it, including the rabbit, and make no apologies. The rabbit had it coming. The KGB goes in. They come out 2 hours later with a badly beaten bear. The bear is yelling, "Okay, okay, I'm a rabbit, I'm a rabbit." Late one Friday night, the policeman spotted a man driving very erratically through the streets of Dublin. They pulled the man over and asked him if he had been drinking that evening. "Aye, so I have. 'Tis Friday, you know, so me and the lads stopped by the pub where I had 6 or 7 pints. And then there was something called happy hour. And they serve these margar items which are quite good. I had 4 or 5 of those. Then I had to drive my friend Mike home, and of course I had to go in for a couple of Guinness, couldn't be rude, ye know. Then I stopped on the way home to get another bottle for later." And the man fumbled around in his coat until he located his bottle of whiskey, which he held up for inspection. The officer sighed and said, "Sir, I'm afraid I'll need you to step out of the car and take a breathalyzer test." Indignantly, the man said, "Why? Don't you believe me?" The teacher pulls Johnny aside after a test. "Johnny, I have a feeling that you have been cheating on your tests," she says. "You know I can't condone cheating." Johnny was astounded and asked the teacher to prove it. "Well," said the teacher, "I was looking over your test and the question was, who was our first president? And the student that sits next to you, Mary, put George Washington, and so did you. So, everyone knows that he was the first president." "Well, just wait a minute," the teacher continued. "The next question was, who freed the slaves? Mary put Abraham Lincoln, and so did you." "Well, I read the history book last night, and I remembered that," said Johnny. "Wait," said the teacher. "The next question was, who was president during the Louisiana Purchase? Mary put I don't know, and you put me either dot." 3 rabbits escape from a testing lab and find an entire field full of carrots. They eat themselves into a stupor and sleep throughout the night. The next morning, they find an entire field full of female rabbits with no males in sight. They screw themselves into a stupor and sleep throughout the night. The next morning, the rabbits get to talking. "I'm gonna go back to that field of carrots," says one. "I'm gonna go back to those cute little rabbits," says the second. "I'm going back to the lab," says the third. "I'm dying for a cigarette." The first student walks into the room, where he will take an oral history test. The teacher asked, "Who is the father of communism?" The first student replied, "Karl Marx." The teacher asked, "In what year?" The first student replied, 1848. The teacher asked, "Are ghosts real?" The first student replied, "The party says no, the people say yes, and scientists are doing research." The first student gets a full score and walks out. He met the second student outside and told him, "The test is easy. Just remember these 3 answers: Karl Marx, 1848, and the party says no, the people say yes, and the scientists are doing research. Understood?" The second student nodded and then entered the room to take the history quiz. The teacher first asked, "What's your name?" The second student replied, Karl Marx. The teacher frowned but continued. What's your birth year? The second student replied. 1848. The teacher angrily slammed his pen on the table. Are you crazy? The second student replied. The party says no, the people say yes, and the scientist is doing research. An old couple enters a cafe in Normandy, overlooking the beach. The couple are clearly tourists, and when the couple sits down at a table, the waitress notices that the old man is missing a part of his leg. Curious, the waitress approaches them and decides to ask why. After asking the question, the old woman answers, stating that her husband fought in the war and lost his leg and most of his hearing on the beach not far from here during the landing at Normandy. Upon hearing this, the waitress rushes to the kitchen without taking their order, only to show up again moments later with a laden service tray and starts to put sandwiches, pancakes, cakes as well as 2 cups of coffee on the table. Confused, the elderly lady tells the waitress that they didn't order this and don't have enough money with them to pay for all of this. Don't worry, miss, I spoke with my boss, and since your husband lost his leg while fighting in the war, all of this is free. The woman smiles in gratitude and leans towards her husband to repeat what the waitress just said directly into his ear, after which he starts smiling as well, shakes the waitress her hand in gratitude, and says, Vielen Dank, das ist sehr nett von dir. A woman goes to a cafe and takes a seat outside. While she's eating, she overhears a group of men at the next table. Look, let's go with the simple option. It's spelled W-O-M. No, I'm sure there's an R in there. W-O-M-R. I thought it was longer than that, and had a B. W-O-M-B-R-R. Finally, the woman has had enough. She walks over to the table and says, Gentlemen, the word you're looking for is W-O-M-B, womb. With that she walks off, the men staring after her. Finally, one of the men turns back to the others. Do you think she's right? Of course not. A slip of a girl like that, I don't suppose she's ever heard an elephant fart. An engaged man asked his father for advice for a long and happy marriage. Dad, you and Mom have been happily married for 28 years now. How do you do it? That's easy, son. When your mom and I first got married, we made a deal. She would make all the little decisions, and I would make all the big decisions. Hey, that sounds like a good arrangement. But how do you decide what's a big decision, and what's a little decision? Oh, there haven't been any big decisions yet.